Hi, and welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. This is episode 165. I'm with Isobel Whitcomb, and they are a writer for Slate, or are you a freelance writer?
I'm a freelance writer, but I've
Right.
contributed to Slate frequently in the
Slate, New
past.
York Times, and who else? Sorry, Slate, New York Times, and others.
Yeah.
Okay, but we want to talk about the article they wrote for New York Times called "How he got concussions so wrong," and they talk about concussion alliance, which with Connor
Formally?
Brumley,
Yeah.
Brumley.
And the article was for Slate,
The
not.
article is there goes for state, yes. But before that, I guess I'll just do a brief little ad thing if I can sponsor, if they're still in sponsoring, but we'll see. Headshake Health. So Headshake Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple and powerful technology. To organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada. Rely on Headshake to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headshakehealth.com for more. And hope that covered it all. But now we got Isabel, and so it was Slate. It was Slate. I'll put the article will be in the link in the podcast description. So don't worry about that, but read it because it's a great article. And not only did they interview Connor Gormley and his mother, but they also had a concussion last summer. Is it
Yeah,
last
last
summer?
Memorial Day.
And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. So your experience with your concussion, and basically, and it's you can read the article, but still hear your voice on it. And so what happened then? How did you get the concussion?
Yeah, so I've played pickup soccer for years now. Very casual games, but I was out on Memorial Day weekend and was defending the goal and happened to be looking at I don't know what, but not in the direction of the ball. When another player uh tried to score a goal and kicked the ball at my head from very close, like maybe five or 10 feet away.
Oh,
And it was a strong guy. So it hit me in the head very hard. I didn't really know what was happening at the time. Um, all I kind of happened, kind of like things like this happen all the time where it kind of seems to occur in slow motion. But I remember my sunglasses being 20 feet away from me on the field and were just like broken into pieces, and my friends getting up and giving them to me. I had a physical therapist on my soccer team, and she
that's
came up
me.
to me. Yeah, she came up to me and said, "Hey, like, let me know if you want me to check you out." And I said, I think I'm good to keep
Okay,
playing."
yeah.
Um, and so and kind of
But you weren't knocked out at all, were you?
I wasn't knocked
No.
out. I thought I was good to keep playing. I felt a little stunned, but honestly, it just like was really surprising. So I
Yeah,
thought I was stunned
yeah.
from being surprised. Kept playing and felt very disoriented. So my depth perception felt kind of off. It just kind of felt like things were all happening from far
Yeah.
away. But
You mentioned, sorry, you mentioned in your article that everything appeared 2D, almost 2D. Is that
yes,
what just the
exactly.
easy way to write about it, or is it kind of what I felt like that comic strip kind of?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, like, it was hard because my depth perception felt all wrong. It just kind of just felt like everything was happening far away, like, in 2 dimensions, exactly, like a comic
Wow,
strip.
wow.
Um, and, just yeah, felt very removed from everything. So I walked off of the field, sat on the sidelines, put a baseball cap over my eyes because everything felt very, very bright, and, just, hung out there.
Yeah.
And, um,
And then you
I
said sorry, then you went home, and the next day you finally felt, well, I should, before I finish asking the bell questions, I should mention their face. does not normally look this red. This because of the red drapes of the window,
Mhm.
and so it's just that. But yeah, that was a influence there. But yeah. So when did you start feeling realizing that it wasn't just be feeling a bit shocked and stunned by the event when you went home and you slept or before?
Well, actually, so my friend on the soccer team who's a physical therapist came off to check me out, and, she did the classic, like, finger tracking test where
Yeah,
she would just,
yeah,
like, follow my finger,
yeah.
and I just really couldn't do it.
No,
I didn't even at the time, it didn't even occur to me that that was something that you should be able to do, like, do
no.
this, and just
Yeah,
my eyes just kept jumping from side to
yeah,
side, so she
yeah.
said, "You're definitely concussed, it might take you a couple days to get over it," and I remember telling her, saying, "Oh, can I go for a run tomorrow?" And she was like, "See how you feel." Um, so yeah, I went home, slept and slept and slept. Honestly, like I had known people who have had concussions before, but they've always like gotten better pretty quickly. So and
Yeah.
I had never talked to anyone in depth about their concussion experience. So I wasn't really freaked out. I just, was like, okay, I'm just gonna take it easy for a couple days. It wasn't until Monday, that things kind of started to go south for
And this
me.
happened on Saturday or
This
Sunday?
happened on a Saturday, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess Tuesday because it was Memorial Day weekend. So after the
Right.
long weekend, I kinda chilled out that weekend, but I did go
Yeah.
out and do some things with
Yeah.
friends. I just
Yeah.
happened to sleep a lot. I tried to
Yeah.
stay off my phone. And on Tuesday, I was actually thinking, I could probably do a light work day, like maybe I'll just do a few hours. And I called up my doctor, and this was the first time I'd like really talked to a medical professional. And they said, you need to be in bed. You should draw the blinds. Um, you really shouldn't be doing anything beyond lying down and resting. And they told me that, if you do too much, you'll risk getting post concussion syndrome, which through my research I found out is not really a term
Yeah.
like specialists are using anymore. And yeah, so that really, really freaked me out, and I went to bed and rested, and I pretty much didn't stop resting for another 6 or 7 weeks.
Wow. So, yeah, so you don't work necessarily work as you did. Sorry, but the question really is, did you have an office to go to, or was it just work from home? Was
I
that
normally work from home.
okay? But is there an office that you may go to that would
Yep.
no
I just
just
just work from home.
go and try to find it. So where what was it, the 6 weeks or 6 8 weeks that you rested, that you realized that there's like not obviously something wrong with you or something, but there's a story here. There's not want to explore, want to write about, want to, we don't know enough about this, or I don't know enough
Well,
about this.
as a writer, I would say when people ask me where I get my story ideas, I
Yeah.
basically just mine my life for story ideas.
Yeah.
That's honestly the main way that I come up with the things I want to write about. So even though I didn't know what the story would be, pretty soon after I got a concussion, I was thinking, like, how do I write about this? So pretty quickly, I realized I wanted to write about concussions, but it wasn't until 3 or 4 weeks into the experience that it what the story would be kind of started to coalesce in my mind. So what was happening about a month in is I was growing increasingly frustrated because I had initially been told that this would be a 5-day recovery, and then a
Yeah.
10-day recovery, and then a 2-week recovery, and then a 4-week recovery. And with each of these kind of
Like,
time,
there's
yeah, like miles,
milestone.
yeah, I started to get more and more hopeless, and then after, like, 1 month, the kind of, like, milestone you get told is 3 months, which is
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Um, And so at that point, I started to get really, like, I was getting very, scared, and that's when I started doing, some of my own research, and this is where I should give credit to another science writer, Tova Danovich, who
Okay.
wrote an article for The Atlantic about her own, concussion experience.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So I am part of a Slack channel for science writers.
Right.
And I have a lot of other friends through that Slack channel, and Tova is one of them. And even though I had been mostly avoiding screens, I'd been periodically going on Slack and asking for advice and kind of posting a little bit about what was going on to update
Okay.
my colleagues. And Tova reached out to me and said, like, I had a concussion about a year ago, and I learned the hard way that rest really doesn't work for some people. Like,
Yeah.
that's enough for some people, but for many people, it requires more active intervention. This was honestly 2 weeks into my recovery, and I kinda brushed it off at first. I kinda
Yeah.
wanted to keep following my doctor's advice, because
Yeah.
I figured, "Oh, my doctor's the one with the medical degree, like, I'm gonna listen to them. They'll tell me if I need to do something more."
Yeah.
Um, then a month in, I started to get very frustrated and doubt, the kind of advice that I was, getting from medical professionals. So I started looking into the resources that Tova had sent me, which included, she mentioned she had seen a vestibular physical therapist, and dizziness was something I was dealing with big
Oh,
time.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I found a vestibular therapist myself, and was simultaneously listening to podcasts about concussions, not reading much articles. I couldn't really read.
Yeah.
But was kind of starting to piece it together that this rest thing was very bad advice.
Yeah.
When I got this physical therapist on the phone, she told me, "Yeah, your instincts are right. Like, you need to be getting up and moving. I'm really glad you called
Yeah.
me. Wish you had come in earlier."
Yeah.
And so that was the point. That was about 5 or 6 weeks into my concussion,
Yeah.
and that was the point when I realized, "Oh, this is the story." This advice led me very badly astray in my recovery.
So what do you think was the most, I mean, I know you not ran into, so you called up or you connected with Connor, but what was your, who, like, how did you start investigating this scenario, and and what are the important facts you learned, important information you learned from just doing research with this?
Yeah, so I didn't really start doing at first, the research that I was doing was honestly just talking to, like, my physical therapist, and
Right.
I should mention, that probably the biggest debilitating symptom that I had is that I really couldn't read. I My eyes were
As a
jumping from
writer,
side
that
to side.
hurts.
Yeah, yeah, the words on a page, felt very jumbled. Like, if
Right.
you imagine, like, an alphabet soup, but of words, I could focus on one individual word, but I couldn't string them together, so it would be
Oh,
like
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Anyone
focusing
listening
on one
sees
word at a
something
time.
or jumping their head like right to left, or
Mhm.
left to right. I see.
Yeah. So, it was very, very slow process that would give me a very bad headache. And I'm a freelance writer, which means that, I am making my money off of contracts,
Yeah.
to write individual stories, so I couldn't make money,
Right.
basically. So that's a sidebar. I couldn't read, so I wasn't really doing research at this time. But by mid-August, I was mostly recovered. I was just experiencing periodic flare-ups at that point, so I was back to work, like, three-quarter time, and that's when I spoke to my editor at Slate about this experience, and, she was immediately interested in me, writing an article about this. And that's when I started reaching out to experts, and the the line of questioning that I started out with when I began talking with experts such as Henrik Zetterberg in Sweden, Fatima Nasrallah at Queensland Brain Institute was, hey, this was my experience with a concussion. Like, is this
Just
common?
normal. Yeah,
Yeah. And my mind was really blown when these experts said again and again, yeah, this experience is very common, and it's really a shame how many people are having your experience of being told you need to go lie down and rest.
yeah,
And it was on Enrique Zetterberg who told me, that probably actively made your recovery much longer and much worse.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's really just too amazing, too bad slash amazing that, I mean, I've been doing this podcast since 2015, and the awareness has, I mean, some of the science obviously has changed, and the awareness has improved a bit, but still, this injury, your concussion was in 2023, like September, July, or whatever, it's like,
May, and I
no, right,
probably
May,
say I
June,
was
okay,
100% better by like
Memorial Day weekend, right, Dave? Yeah. Still, so less than a year ago, and there's still not, it's not out there for the common knowledge of what to do, but the very something that happens all the time. It's not like it's a rare occurrence. People get concussed all the time, so I think it's great that you actually got it out there and research it and put it out there to the public who hopefully will digest some of this, all of this information. But what would you say was the most valuable information that you learned from either your physio or from Connor or his mother or somebody else or Enrique or Father Allah? Somebody
um yeah, something that I learned that was
or
really
not, yeah,
fascinating.
not
Yeah.
something, but yeah, some general, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I am a real nerd about neuroscience. I didn't study neuroscience in college, but it's something
Yeah,
that I've written about a lot, particularly pain. I'm very interested in the way that our brain interprets the messages that our
yeah,
body gets from the world.
yeah,
Um, and so because I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff, it's not enough for me to say, "Oh, this is a normal experience." I wanna know what is actually going on in my brain. So that was my next line of questioning, and what I found is that, a concussion is, not a bruise. That might be obvious to to many of your listeners, but because I had been told over and over
yeah,
again, "Oh,
yeah,
it's like a bruise to the brain," I
yeah,
took that quite literally. And what I found is that actually, concussion is it's a rotational force oftentimes on
yeah,
your actual nerves in your brain, so your neurons. And these are like long, kind of cord shaped cells, and when they the cord and the long part is called an axon, and when the axon twists, as it does during a concussion, it kind of frays, and it makes it very difficult for messages to get across these nerves.
yeah,
And basically this kind of creates a haywire communication in your brain. So the different regions of your brain kind of stop communicating properly. So, like a manifestation of this might be that I am looking at my screen and I am seeing words, but I do not really understand what the words mean together. So, kind of, and this is my very crude non-neuroscientist understanding, but the part of my brain that is looking is not really talking to the part of my brain that is like interpreting
yeah.
information.
Well,
Um,
I really like what you wrote about the, I thought it was great. It was a, with, I think Enrique was the one who gave you the analogy. What was the traffic jam or the roadwork, not traffic jam, but roadwork. So just want to explain that to people who have not ignorantly read your awesome article. So, we get people reading the article too now, but, yes, but could you please, just tell me what Enrique and you wrote about the roadworks and traffic and how that applies to your brain and the sharing of axons.
Yeah, so because the regions of your brain aren't talking to each other properly and the axons are not able to send it or transmit information, it ends up acting a little bit like a traffic jam, right? But what I found is that um that that doesn't mean you have to wait for the axons to heal to
Yeah,
actually feel better. So axons and neurons take a really, really long time to heal. They're actually very, very bad at repairing themselves. But
yeah,
that doesn't mean it has to take that long to heal from a concussion. Your
yeah,
brain is remarkably plastic. And when people talk about the brain being plastic, what that actually means is when parts of it like die or get broken, like in a concussion, it can just find new ways to do the same things or send the same information. So during a traffic jam, if there's road work happening, you're not going to just sit there in traffic for weeks until the road work is done.
yeah,
Usually you'll get redirected down a different route. And so the same thing happens in your brain where those axons are out of commission for a while, but your brain can find new neurons to send the same messages. And that recalibration period is really tough and is very, very tiring, which is why you feel so crappy during a concussion. But the thing is that in order to form these new connections, you need to actually be engaging in like your normal activities, not at your, regular levels. It needs to be like very, very moderate level to like acclimate yourself. But lying in bed, as I was doing in a dark room,
yeah.
is not engaging those new networks in your brain, or new pathways in your brain. And so you can't really train yourself to like create these new ways of sending information.
Right. So when did you start to decide that if she got back about running in or walking or whatever? When did you engage in activity for your new for say your fear physio told you to do that?
I had the conversation with the physical therapist at the beginning of July, so this was 5 weeks in.
Okay.
And she actually didn't make me wait until I went into the office. We had a quick consultation. She said, "Yes, I'm gonna be able to help you." And she said, "The first thing, I wanna make sure that you are doing the right things on your own before you even come into my office." So she said, "I want you to make sure that you are getting out and, like, either power walking or jogging for 20 minutes a day." She said, "This is your homework right now." And, she said, uh push yourself to the point where if your symptoms are on a scale of 1 to 10, they are 2 points higher than baseline.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I wake up in the morning and my symptoms are a 3 out of 10, she wanted me power walking or jogging for 20 minutes up to like a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
um and that was completely new information. So I started doing that, and then when I went in to see her, she got me on the treadmill and started taking my heart rate, and had me exercising at a particular heart rate at that point, and we kind of just kept ramping up the jogging after that.
And how did you feel through when she said pick it up to 5 or even higher? How did you feel physically? Did you feel like, "Oh, this is, I'm getting winded or I'm getting my leg also tired, I'm really tired now?" Or did you feel, "Oh, I can do this. This is nothing. This is just I should do this a lot more."
Yeah, well, I should mention that I'm a trail runner, so,
Oh, oh,
my,
yeah.
uh,
It was very
my
easy.
body was craving it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it made me how it would make me feel is either very fatigued, or my head would feel a little fuzzy, or, I might get, like, a slightly worse headache. I obviously didn't push it past that point.
okay.
Like, there were days where maybe I didn't get very good sleep the night before,
Yeah,
and I just couldn't do as much, and that was fine.
okay,
But for me, even though my symptoms were getting a little bit worse, the feeling of like the confidence of knowing I was doing
yeah,
something that was going to help, and the confidence that my physical therapist had in me that this was going to help me get better, it felt way better than sitting at home just waiting
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
Yeah, also, but something that I've heard is common for probably for everyone, but athletes in particular. I'm used to being on a training regimen.
Yeah,
Um and I'm used to pushing through a certain level of discomfort to like achieve the results
I
that
was
I want.
gonna say that.
And it felt good to have a program to be like, yes, this is like my physical therapist is like my coach, and I am like doing the steps that she's
Yeah,
telling me to do. And it was incredibly satisfying to me
yeah.
to kind of see things change, even
So,
though it was
sorry. So there was a bit of discomfort at first when you started, because
yeah,
you were felt like does it, was it your body or your brain like inside? And you said you had
my
headaches.
brain. Yeah, it was
Totally
my
brain.
brain. And it would be, yeah, like I said, either headaches, often dizzy. So at first I was not running for more than like 30 seconds at a time because the dizziness would be quite intense.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of the time this looked like very fast walking with like a
Yeah.
little bit of like jogging here and there. And over time I was able to increase the amount of time that I was jogging until I was doing almost the whole 20 minutes.
And how long would you be before you can assume even now, which last year after, but what is your distance? Are you a 10K run or a marathon or
Uh,
like a
I
trail
I'm
running?
I'm training for a 50K right now.
Oh, what's your marathon?
Actually I ran a 20-mile race 3 weeks ago. So I'm back.
Oh, nice. I was
And
gonna say that.
but I think I was getting back to a pretty normal level of training by like October, I would
Okay.
say.
But
Yeah.
how do you feel? How does your body feel? Body, brain, the whole thing. Like, how does that feel? Does it feel any different than say when you were in training in April as compared to training in like October? Or did you feel? Is there a difference? Think.
So there's no difference in terms of running. I feel amazing when I run. I would say pretty much I feel almost all the way back to normal. I The one change that I suspect is due to my concussion is I used to have no issues sleeping ever. I was one of those
Oh,
people
really?
that I would like lay
Right.
down and be asleep before I could even like pick up a
Yeah.
book. Um
Yeah.
and I deal with pretty annoying insomnia these days. And that's completely new for me. That started last summer.
Oh,
Um and it's something that I'm actively still trying to deal with.
right.
And occasional headaches, which again, I was never a headache person
Yeah.
before. But in terms of those are like the two remaining things. The insomnia is the one that like still I would say impacts my quality of life. But during the day, I'm usually like very, I'm back to my normal amount of work. I am probably in better shape than I was before my
Oh,
concussion. So yeah,
hence the
I'm
50,
very
hey.
grateful for
Hence the 50, hey, you're doing.
that.
So when is that?
Not until October. I literally just
Oh,
signed up
so
for it.
yeah, well, where you're in Portland, right?
Yes.
So where I mean I was in Portland in 2018 for 3 days, buddy of mine. Steve, so hi Steve. And yeah, so where's the 50, where's the fifth race? Is it in Oregon or is it in
It's in Oregon. It's along the Rogue River Gorge.
okay.
So there's this beautiful section of the Rogue River
Yeah.
that goes through almost these like canyons of rock, which is right next to
Like
Crater Lake
toward
National
Idaho kind of?
Hmm?
Is it toward Idaho?
No, it's right next to Crater Lake National Park, which is in Southern Oregon.
Okay, oh geez, I'm cool. But so how is your reading now?
My reading is totally fine. Like I
Is
said,
that
sometimes when I spend a lot of time on screens, I do get a headache, which I didn't used to get.
yeah.
Um, it's interesting though. Um, there are that and the insomnia. I sometimes suspect it has to do with the concussion, but it's very hard to tell sometimes whether
Yeah.
something is just your body doing new things or because of a particular experience. So I'm not totally sure. When I interviewed scientists, there are many studies that show that over half of concussion patients are still having a couple symptoms, like, 6 months, a
Yeah.
year down the road.
Oh, yeah.
But the major problem with interpreting these studies is a lot of people, some of those symptoms might not actually be because of the concussion.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm experiencing, where I'm like, maybe I'm almost 30, like maybe insomnia is just a new thing for
Yeah.
me. Maybe it's because I hit my
Don't
head.
worry about that.
Yeah.
Don't really turn 30. Yeah, but I mean, I'm gonna speak so you're reading, so there, yeah, did that just reading, that's what I was trying to think of, but, did we said the word is to be jumbled?
Yeah, the words
And
would
now
be
they just
really
kind of just heard to kind of
jumbled.
stop being jumbled all of a sudden, or did that
Um,
happen, or?
yeah, jumble okay, so I it's that's the best way that I can describe
Okay,
it, but
but
it's
it's
more like
not,
I can only read one word at a time,
okay.
and instead
You
of, like,
forget like
normally
what
I
word
could
you're
read
before kind of? You don't
yeah,
know
like,
where it
you
goes and stuff?
focus on one word and
Yeah,
then find the next word and focus on it and then like try and string them together.
yeah,
And my physical therapist suspected that this was an eye tracking issue. So a problem that many people who experience concussions have is your eyes stop being able to coordinate properly.
it's a cave,
Um
did you hear that term? I heard that I do the, the standardization thing for the University Medical Center here, for the medical
hmm,
students. It's a
yeah.
cave when your eyes are bit, well, I have delusion, so I'm kind of, I've had illusions for 21 years now, but I mean, but still, but my eyes don't get as much, but that's the thing, your eyes kind of just move back and forth, don't stay steady.
Yeah, yeah. So normally, your eyes are actually each taking an individual picture and your
Yeah,
brain is combining those pictures into one.
yeah,
And some people when they have a concussion, their eyes are not really moving in unison or so it's just very taxing for your brain to like put together those two images.
yeah,
And so m my so other than the running, something my physical therapist and I were really working on were eye tracking exercises. So these can look very odd. My roommates and I were laughing a lot about them because I'd be standing in the living room, like, with a ball on a string, and I'd be, like, standing on one foot and swinging the ball from side to side and, tracking it with my eyes. Sometimes I would have to do, like, word association or
yeah.
walking backwards just so, I'd be engaging different parts of my brain at the same time, and they're funny very funny looking exercises, but they really, really helped.
But the word when when you're reading, so that just kind of helped us kind of fix itself spontaneously, or was it like a gradual process?
It was very gradual.
Yeah,
Um, I pretty much as soon as I started physical therapy, other than the jogging, I started going back to work, and that was honestly the hardest transition for me, like, much, much harder than the jogging every day, and I could only handle, like, 30 minutes at a time, like, maybe 2 30-minute increments of work, which literally was just, like, checking my email, and, over time so basically it was the same rule as with running where, if it was okay if my symptoms went up, like, 2 points from baseline, but not more than that,
yeah.
um, and if, I woke up the next day and felt back to normal and felt okay after all of that, I could increase the amount of time that I was working, so by the end of July, I had been doing physical therapy for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I think I was working for like 4 hours a day, broken up into like hour-long increments. And it felt like a lot, but it was very satisfying, to be back at that point.
I'll bet, I'll bet. So
Yeah.
you're back working now
Mhm.
full time, or just, or part time, or how much you feel you can?
I would say only in the last month am I doing about the same amount of work that I was doing before my concussion. Even up until recently, I would say I was doing like 80% of the amount that I was doing. So because I set my own hours, I don't really
Yeah,
have like full time or part time, but
yeah.
for a long time I was only working like 5 or 6 hours a day, and now I would say I'm back to doing like between 6 to 8, which as a freelancer is like pretty normal for
So
me.
what are like science based? What are you working on? What are you working on now? Or
Working on so many projects. I'm actually in the
really?
busiest period right now since last summer. But I am kind of starting my next piece about chronic pain and chronic
Oh,
pain science and treatment, which is something that I've reported on a lot over the years. I'm working on a lot of environmental pieces. So when I'm not a health journalist, I
yeah.
write about environmental issues. So I'm working on a piece about owls, and another piece about mushrooms. Um, what else am I working on? Oh, I'm working on a crazy story about eh, the big earthquake that is going to hit the
Oh,
Pacific
what the
Northwest
West?
at some point. And the
When's that
like
going to be?
uh what the earthquake?
Yeah, when's that going to be?
Um
You have that figured out yet?
30% chance of happening in the next I want to say 30 years. Don't quote
Oh.
me on that statistic, but I'm planning on staying in Portland. There's like a decent chance that I'll
Hopefully not
experience.
when you're running.
Yeah.
Hopefully not the gorge or for
Yeah.
the gorge. That's what I was thinking of. The gorge. I was thinking of that's near Idaho, right?
Um, so
Gorge or the something.
there is a gorge near Idaho. I've never been there though.
You
So
know,
Portland is on the Columbia Gorge, which is a different one, but
so
also
that's
very
probably what I'm thinking of. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm from Canada, East Coast Canada, so I
Yeah.
just think of driving down from Vancouver through Seattle and Portland and stuff. So on the highway, on the coastal highway. But yeah. So are you shopping around those articles, those works?
No, they have homes
They have homes
already.
in them? Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so
writing for a bunch of different
well,
places.
I won't reach out to won't not reach out if I can, but I won't say but because they've already been bought. Is that how it works?
Yes.
I want to ask you about this stuff about your again. It's I want to know how freelance stuff works, but you just kind of like have an idea and you approach. Do you have an idea and you approach it
Yeah, pretty much.
and they
I
say go
have
for it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So I have clients that approach me, with their stories that they want to run and say, "Hey, do you
okay,
want to write a story on this particular topic?" And I'll say sure and take that on. With a lot of these stories I'm working on now, they were ideas that I've been brewing for a really long time. I do a lot of the initial research on my own time. Put together essentially what is called a pitch, which is usually like want to say like 4 or 5 paragraphs outlining like all the research I've done.
okay,
Um, Send it off to whatever editor I think will
yeah,
like it, and sometimes that usually it involves like at least one rejection in my experience. Like
yeah,
all of these stories I'm working
okay,
on were rejected at least one time.
yeah.
um, and then hopefully you find someone who wants to give you the go ahead.
Nice. Well, so
Yeah.
so Slate took this one on, or they asked you to write this one, or you mentioned
Um,
that they kind of you said the editor Slate kind of said we want you to write out this, or
so I with Slate, I have a like um I've had a relationship with them for
okay,
3 or 4 years now.
okay,
And one particular editor and I bounce around ideas all the time in more of a
right,
casual way. So I actually got her on the phone and we just talked about my experience and I kind
yeah,
of shared the kinds of things that I'd want to write about, and she gave me the go ahead to write about
mhm.
this experience based on a phone call.
Yeah. You're kind of like I going through this concussion, how it's terrible, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Not to talk down about it, but and it's just like, and she was like, oh, that sounds like a interesting article. So write
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you reached out to a lot of people like from Sweden to Australia, and
Yes.
anyone near in Portland or in, on the that you talked to in California or
I
BC.
talked to some folks in San Francisco. They didn't make it into the final
Right.
article, but those conversations were very informative.
Yeah.
I will say there's so many things that I learned during while researching this article that I really couldn't fit into the final draft, which made it very, very hard to write actually, because
Yeah.
there was so much good information and I really had to distill it down
Exactly.
into one narrative. Otherwise, it would have been like incoherent. But there's a lot of other interesting stuff. I would say like the one area that I really didn't get a chance to write about at all is the new research that's happening on concussion imaging and biomarker testing.
And oh, so what'd you find out with that? Quickly, if you
So right now,
know.
one of the tricky things about concussions is that you can't see them on a CT scan or an MRI, which oftentimes when you get hit in the head, it, especially if you pass out, you'll get sent to go get a
Yeah.
CT scan or an MRI, and that's
People
important.
people want proof that they've done something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it's also important to rule out something even more
Yeah.
serious, like, an
Exactly.
aneurysm or something.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you have a concussion, nothing will show up
Well,
on those imaging, and that can be really frustrating because it's like, "Hey, I feel terrible, and this doctor is telling me I'm fine."
look
Um
at this.
but there are imaging techniques that Fatima Nasrallah is one of the scientists who's doing a ton of great work on this, that can detect changes in the brain that occur during a concussion, and this isn't being used in routine clinical use, but in the future we might be able to diagnose concussions based on these imaging techniques. And similarly, one of the reasons that this could be really important is there are many, many different manifestations of concussions. So some
Yeah.
people are very dizzy, some people have issues with their eye tracking. And in the future, we might be able to diagnose the specific like type of concussion that someone has and
Yeah.
prescribe a more tailored kind of care for someone based on like what changes have occurred in the brain.
Yeah. Because actually, I interviewed on this podcast, but was this was 2022 or 21? I forget when, but yeah, of Dr. Alan Pierce from who probably definitely not probably is a colleague of Dr. Nasrallah, and he was talking about that the device and the potential of that device that imaging that could work, but well, one of the points you made making about how there's a lot of great information that couldn't make it in, and there's so much different information and good information that was, but it's all one of my big pet peeves about brain drain concussion is that it's so all the information is so disparate. There's not like a one center for say like kind of like cancer has like a in like Canada and the US have like they have their own big they're big like, organizations that are championing cancer research. But concussion symptoms are so different that there's never one place because everyone wants to like I do my own blog and like my own podcast and other people want to do their own blog, their own podcast, their own organization because they have different symptoms. They can't relate to me and I can't relate to them. And so it's a
Mhm.
whole there's no one if there's one body that was saying, okay, brain injury, concussion, this is important research in this area. We need money, and then they would no doubt they get a lot of money. But there's so many small organizations they can't get enough money because why give it to one small organization when they can't do anything with it? Give it to like the hospitals and
Mhm.
research centers. But that's just my take from doing this for
Yeah.
a while now. It's just
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned cancer because you know uh with cancer we can identify many different types, and the
Yeah,
treatment is not the same between types.
exactly.
You have many different
Only,
types of treatment, and even today, like, therapy is highly individualized, and that's one
yeah,
of the reasons, the major advances that we're making in cancer care.
yeah.
And obviously concussion is not deadly in the same way as cancer,
No.
but at the same time in the future, similarly, we might have many different subtypes of concussion, much more tailored, like individualized care that takes into account, like the specific changes that are occurring in a person's brain, and also the like manifestations of their concussion.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point because there's so much, like you said, so many subtypes of concussion, and so many different symptoms they can arise. Like I
Mhm,
never had a concussion per se. I had a coma. I was in a coma, but I mean, I experienced a lot of the symptoms that I've heard people with concussions have discussed. I experienced kind of more intensely and more permanently, I guess. But
mhm,
still, there. I mean, they're just. It seems like to me, it seems because I guess as I kind of got the gamut, except for headaches. Really, I didn't really get headaches except for I had a brain fog right there, but my head. But I mean, but it seems like there should be one organization that can really, or one nationally. Well, obviously one in the states, one in Canada. Different ones, different countries, different health systems. There's got to be organizations that can really put this together. Put together, like I know Australia seems to have a good. They started off with I don't know the brain bank, but like the more rate, more they seem to have been more together. More, well, I could be wrong now. I'm not from Australia. I've never been there, but I mean, what I've heard about, like people who are kind of closely related, the colleagues or like the brain bank and like different university, Queensland and Melbourne and Sydney, like different organizations and different medical centers that are kind of combined, kind of closely work together, kind of more than we have in North
mhm,
America. But I could
mhm,
be wrong. But who knows?
mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So, is there anything I'm surprised we could? Because I mean, the free Zoom now. So I'm surprised we got this long. Be out getting cough. It usually has a timer. It's like
Yeah,
five,
that's so
5 minutes.
interesting.
And I haven't seen it yet. And we've been talking
Yeah.
for a while. So, yeah, for a while. So, and is there anything you want to leave the listeners with about your where can they can write you the website the link I'll post in the description of the podcast the link to Isabel's article about how we got concussions so wrong and it's at Slate but I will post the direct link on my description. But is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with about this, about your experience and about concussions in general? What you've learned?
Yeah. I think the one thing I would add that researchers repeatedly brought up is concussions. The reason that kind of what brought concussions into the spotlight was sports, but concussions are not just a sports thing. The majority of concussions occur because of falls and automobile accidents. And also there's uh likely a really heavy burden on domestic violence victims, and
Yeah,
oftentimes people who are not athletes kind of do not recognize the symptoms of concussion because we're kind of hammered with this idea that concussions are a sports related injury. So yeah, I guess that would be the last thing that I would end on.
that's an excellent point because actually, for 2 years or last year, did a podcast last year, did a podcast with Dr. Eve Valera of from Boston, Harvard Medical School, but about brain injury, domestic violence of brain injury and concussion. So listen to that, and please, of course, I will again. I've said this many times, but I'll say it again. Read Isabel's amazing article and learn from it, and share with others and tell others about concussion and get the information out there, so we don't have to. Not everyone has to find out for themselves. So they have to be a great researcher like Isabel to find out that we have a connection, say, with their their Slack colleagues on not Slack, their Slack colleagues, but her colleagues on Slack about and find out that way how to best way, a better way to treat a concussion. But yes, but so thank you so much, Isabel,
Thank you.
and yes, and good luck with the all your stuff and your of course all your articles on your race, and so that's in so put your bets in on Isabel completing the 50K racing under let's see, I'm gonna put that time on you now under
I'd like to
10
finish, I think,
hours.
under like 5.5 hours.
Oh,
I'm not trying to set any speed records. I just want to run
I
33
said, I
miles,
said,
31
do
miles.
you run it straight or do you run it or do you, where you, was it like a trail that we'd have like checkpoints and stuff and
Yeah,
as I
there's lots of
know,
check.
our friend here runs, does ultra
Yeah.
marathons and
Mhm. Yeah. All right. It was really nice to meet
it
you.
was great talking to you and
So much
yeah,
for
again,
having
so
me.
it's great. Thanks a lot. And thank you
All
everyone
right.
for listening. Thanks for listening, everyone.
All right. Bye.
See ya.